She grew up in a Long Island suburb and felt anything but pretty. Her severe stutter made her feel shy and awkward. And at night, just before falling asleep, Peggy Lipton saw herself as an actress, one that everyone was talking about. And wouldn't you know it, that's just what she grew up to be. Peggy Lipton was hip and cool, the it girl, and a pop icon of the late 60s and 70s, thanks to her star turn in the hit series, The Mod Squad. She was so hot, Paul McCartney wanted her, and so did Elvis Presley, but it was Grammy Award-winning record producer Quincy Jones with whom she fell in love and married. 2 children, and 14 years later they divorced, and she returned to acting. And now at 57, Peggy Lipton is ready to tell her story about both the glory days and some very dark ones. It's a tell-all autobiography called Breathing Out. Peggy Lipton, good morning, nice to see you.
Good morning to you,
So
Kate.
Peggy, you've experienced so much in your life, and I think maybe people want to know, why did you write this book? Why not sort of keep these things between you and the parties involved? Why did you want to share it with the world?
Well, I always was, and I still am in a weird way, private. But they were, I realized I had led an interesting life, and they were interesting stories. And so as I wrote it, I tried to be as objective as I could. I mean, it's hard when you're writing. But, and it's not so much I wanted to share it with the world. I kind of needed to purge it in a way for myself and look at it as being, you know, what it was. Each event that happened in my life, and certainly the things I write about in the book, led to my growing up and led to my being who I am today.
It's so fascinating to me that you became sort of the girl everyone idolized in the 60s, given your own issues with self-esteem. And I guess this isn't that unusual a story, because a lot of people, I think, compensate by getting sort of positive affirmation from the public when they feel very inadequate internally. But you really did have a lot of issues growing up. You were a stutterer, as I mentioned.
I still am.
Well, really? Well,
yeah.
You can't tell. You've got it very much under control.
Thank you.
And you were awkward and shy. You felt sort of insecure around your own mom. And then, of course, the biggest thing of all, you were sexually abused, you know, by your aunt's husband, starting at the age of 7, with your sibling, was it your brother, Peggy, in the next bed? And this happened sort of, how often did this happen?
Well, when we would go to their home, which was in New Jersey, it was about twice a year, 2 or 3 times a year.
And you didn't really come to terms with this until much later on.
Much later in my life.
So this is sort of the classic case of repressing what happened to you. And how did it become evident to you that this was what you experienced?
Well, I used to think about it, but then I used to block it out. But I think you know, the turning point for me was I was in an acting class, and we were given an instruction to remember a time where we felt disappointed. And all of a sudden I was like laying on the floor, and I remembered looking at my dad and walking with him on the boardwalk and wanting to tell him what was in my heart, you know, wanting to tell him what was going on. Of course I couldn't, I was way too young, but feeling the disappointment in him because he couldn't take care of it, but of course he never knew.
So all these things contributed to you feeling pretty lousy about yourself. And even when you became this pop culture icon in the 60s as Julie Barnes on the Mod Squad, you write, unfortunately, I was hardly able to enjoy it. Yeah. Why is that?
Well, I love the work. I love my co-stars. I love showing up at work, and I actually do like working. But what I didn't like was all the attention on myself. See, I thought I wanted the attention, but when it actually came, I couldn't enjoy it. I was too paranoid.
But looking back on it, are you happy you were a part of this series, and how did it change you?
Oh, completely. Well, it did give me a confidence, actually, that I wouldn't have had if. You know, I like the daily workout. I like being one character, you know, and working on one character for such a long time. And I like that family thing. That was a nurturing feeling to me. But when it came to going out or making small talk, I just wasn't very good at it.
Meanwhile, you were an unabashed child of the 60s, yes. Really, and you were completely unapologetic in this book about having this hunger for sex. and you were almost a predator, I think, is safe to say, right? I mean, you went after what you wanted until you got it, right?
Yes.
And that was,
Is that a predator?
well, maybe in a way. Maybe that's too strong a word, but you were certainly sexually aggressive, wouldn't
Right.
you say, Peggy?
Yes, definitely.
And you went after Paul McCartney with a vengeance. You tell the story about going to a party for kids, and you were the only one in the line with breasts because you really desperately wanted to not only meet Paul McCartney, but basically bed Paul McCartney.
Well, I mean, it was the days of groupies, and I'm sure I was nothing but
And free
glorified.
love,
and
right?
free love, absolutely. And also, if you like someone, it wasn't about a conversation. It certainly wasn't about dating. I don't remember ever going out on a date. That was your immediate contact, was to to be intimate with someone. That's how you got to know them. Then after that, if you still liked them, then it was cool. But I mean, that's how the social mores were of those times. So it was not a big deal to have a crush on a rock star and try to get to a concert, but I took it a lot further.
And you did have a romantic liaison with Paul McCartney. You also did with Elvis Presley, or you had attempted to.
Yeah.
It didn't work out.
It didn't work out. He was very persistent in getting to know me, which I found interesting. And so I saw him a number of times, but I did like him as a person. I thought he was kind of a beautiful person.
You know, I think you were sort of searching for validation and filling up a void you felt by connecting with these people. Ultimately, though, did these casual experiences, Peggy, only add to sort of your feelings of insecurity and inadequacy?
In some ways, yes. But finally, when I made the decision that that was not going to get me where I wanted to go inside, from the inside out, when I could make that decision, then I met my husband, and so the timing, was right. Yes, I was still very insecure, and I fell in love with each one of these men. I fell completely in love.
And then you ultimately, as we mentioned, married Quincy
Yes.
Jones, had 2 beautiful daughters with him, and in the book you detail your marriage to him and some of the challenges you all faced as a couple, and ultimately why that didn't work out as well. But you're in a very good place now. It's like goes on and on and on. Every time I feel like, okay, that's the end of Peggy's story. You were diagnosed with colon cancer, but now you've been told by doctors you're cancer-free.
Right.
So you have had a really crazy life. Would you do anything differently, Peggy?
No, I wouldn't. But I still want my life to be, maybe not as exciting. As you get older, it gets a little harder to live on such a high level. But definitely, I want more things to happen. No, and I wouldn't have done it differently, because how could I say that I wouldn't want my children, or that I wouldn't want the experience of being married to Quincy, or that I wouldn't want that work, the great work life that I had. No, I wouldn't want to change anything.
Well, the book is called Breathing Out, and it's chock-a-block full of fascinating stories from your fascinating life. Peggy Lipton, a.k.a. Julie Barnes.
Yes, of course.
Good to see you, Peggy. Thanks for coming by. And the book, once again, is called Breathing Out. And we'll be back in a moment. This is Today on NBC.
Scarborough Fair. Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. Remember me to one who lives there. She once was a true love of mine.